With the new building blocks released, the workflow of setting up an interaction has become way easier and faster to configure. Just by simply adding the interactions from the building blocks menu, we get an interactable template along with the interactors for each of the hands and controllers depending on what you have in your OVR camera rig. Which is really convenient, right? Well, not exactly. If you have started using it already, you would have gone through these exact steps while configuring an existing object into an interactable. Something similar to what I have here. What I like to do is that I either like to copy my changes inside the interactable template or copy the changes from the template into my existing object and then assign the missing components, in this case the rigid body, and try to build and test it. And majority of the times, unsurprisingly, it doesn't work in the first try. I again have to come back, compare the components one by one with the template, figure that one or more components are missing. In this case, as you can see, I'm missing a box collider. I then assign a box collider or the missing component and test it again. And this has been the way I had been doing it lately, until I revisited the docs and found out about quick actions. The Quick Actions feature was released after the introduction of building blocks in version 62, and to solve this exact issue among the developers, it allows using Unity's familiar right-click wizards to apply changes to existing scene game objects and camera rig, and is termed as the recommended way to add interactions to our project if we are using hands and controllers. But similar to building blocks, currently this doesn't support adding interactions to controller-driven hands or capsens. Quick Actions as of now only supports adding grab, distance grab, and ray interactions for game objects, and only ray and poke interactions for canvases, which are the most common interactions you will need. But if you want to add any other interactions apart from those, then you have to go over the legacy way of adding them, tutorials of which are already available in the channel page, which you can take a look at. So let's see how we can take advantage of this feature in Unity. With Quick Actions, when we right click on a game object, we get an Interaction SDK menu. Hovering on it shows us all the available interactions we can add onto our existing game object or canvas. If you do not see this menu in your project, make sure you have the latest Meta XR Core SDK, Interaction SDK, and Interaction SDK OVR integration packages installed. If not, you can install all three by only installing the Meta XR Interaction SDK OVR integration package. Rest too will be downloaded automatically as part of the dependency. Okay, coming back to the scene, I have a simple game object with no modifications yet, which I want to convert into a grab interactable. To do that, all I have to do is to right click on the game object, and under the Interaction SDK, I have to click on Apply Grab Interaction, which opens up an editor window titled as Grab Wizard. This wizard or editor tool allows us to configure our existing game object by adding the missing components or assigning existing components to the serialized fields for creating the interactable. In the wizard, the first thing you will notice is the settings section, under which we have a drop down to select where to add the grab interactors. In case you are seeing a warning here instead of the drop down, something similar to this, then you don't have an OVR interaction prefab added to your scene. To do that, either you can drag and drop an OVR interaction prefab from the project view into the scene and also add in OVR hands and OVR controllers to it as child game objects, or you can do a shortcut way by just adding any interaction from the building blocks that will add the OVR interaction under the camera rig with the hands and controllers pre-configured, similar to what I have here. The only thing that I did for this tutorial is to remove any interactors added by the building blocks under the OVR hands and OVR controllers and deleting the pre-existing template from the building blocks. Now with the OVR interaction prefab added to the scene, reapplying the grab interaction should now show you this drop down window. Expanding the drop down shows where we can add the grab interactors, and as I have both the hands and controllers added, it shows me both add to hands and add to controller options. Next, we want to support all kind of grab types, so I will leave the drop down set to all. The next required component sections shows us all the fields that is required for making this game object a grab interactable. These are the dependencies that the interactable scripts are dependent on. The target transform is already set to GameObjects transform. We are applying this configuration too, but we don't have a rigid body or a box collider for grab detection volume, which we can add just by simply clicking the fix all button given here, which will add the missing components to the GameObject. Okay, one more thing I want to show you here is that it is not required or mandatory to apply the configurations to the root GameObject. If you want, you can have the changes applied to a child GameObject instead, something like this here. But I'm going to keep the configurations on the root object and click on create to add in the interactable scripts and assign the component to the script serialized fields. And just by that way, it has added the respective grab interactors and an ISDK_grab interaction game object with the interactable scripts to make it a grab interactable. Next, let's add array grab interaction to another game object I already have in the scene. But unlike the grab interactable, I have collider set up in a child game object. The array grab wizard shows us an error message saying that it needs a collider or a surface for the raycast head to work, and a fix button that will generate a collider. We can also add the collider by clicking on the fix button in the optional components section, which will add a sphere collider. But since we already have a collider, it is not recommended to add a new one unless you actually need to have a separate collider for the raycast head. Instead, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to drag and drop my existing collider. The eye surface will be automatically generated from the collider, so no need to add it explicitly. But I do need a rigid body, so I'm going to add it using the fix button on the wizard, and that adds the rigid body onto the game object. And as expected, clicking on create button added the ray interactors to hands and colliders, and also added an ISDK_ray grab interaction game object with the interactable scripts on it. And the collider surface script is now referencing to the box collider we assigned in the wizard. Okay, finally let's move on to adding the distance grab interaction to another existing game object I have. Under the settings, we have the same drop down to where to add the interactors. Next, we can select the distance grab type we want for the interactors. Again, leaving default to all supported grab types for the hand interactors. You can select any one of them if you want. Under the required components, we need a rigid body and a collider. And looks like the wizard has picked up the box collider automatically, but not the rigid body that I have on the same game object, which is really strange. It should have picked up both if it's already selecting one of them. But anyway, I will drag the rigid body onto the field and also on the collider to make sure that it's referring to the right collider. Under optional components, the timeout snap zone allows us to provide a snap interactable to which the grab or game object will snap back after left ungrabbed for a few seconds. It is not required, but let me show you how this works. So let me create one by clicking on the fix button, which adds a new game object in the scene. Next, let me show you another quirk of using quick actions. For that, let me go back and change the interactors only for controllers here and click create on interactable. Now this creates the grab interactor only for controllers, which is what we set to, and it also created an ISDK distance hand grab interaction child game object. And as expected, the interactable scripts are referencing to the rigid body and the colliders we had provided in the wizard. Also, do you remember the snap interactable we have added? Now we need to give it a transform. It needs to for snapping back the interactable after we ungrab it. So for that, what I will do is I will copy the current position of the game object that I have and apply the same to the snap interactable for it to always snap to where I have placed it currently. Now let's say I want to add the distance grab interactors to the hands too. And if you again right click and apply the distance grab interaction and select add to hands and provide the references again to the widget and hit create, it's going to add the interactors, but it will also add another duplicate ISDK distance hand grab interactable giant game object with new set of scripts. Although you can safely delete it afterwards as we already have one, but this is something that I think Meta should fix it. Alright, let's move on and build and test the interactions. Alright, as we can see the ray interactor is working already. Let me try and grab the first interactable on the left. Okay, I can grab it, which is really great and seems to be working just fine. But the ray interactor should be disabled when I'm using the grab interactions. Oh, I think we missed adding the best hover interactable group to our interactors. So let's go back into Unity and do that quickly. In order to automatically switch rest of the interactors on and off based on the current interactions getting performed, we need to add a script to each of the hand and controller interactors. For that, I will expand each of the hands and controllers and select the interactor's parent game object. Now let's add in the script called Best Hover Interactors Group. After adding the script on each of the Best Hover Interactors Group, we need to add in the respective list of interactors that we have under that hand and controllers. Make sure you drag and drop in the correct ones as part of the Best Hover Interactors Group list, otherwise you may see some unintentional results. The Best Hover Interactors Group now will take care of enabling and disabling the interactors based on the interaction we are performing. Alright, here we are in the build using controllers at first, and as you could see we have the ray interactors enabled by default. Okay, let me try to grab the cube on the left, which is having a grab interactable on it, and as you could see the ray interactor gets disabled as soon as I grab the cube. Okay, looks great. Moving on to the ray grab interactable, which shows the reticle on the object we are about to interact with, and I can grab it using the grip button on either of the controllers, and then I can have it move around while grabbing it. Okay, next let's test the distance grab interactable, and clearly we can see the distance grab curved ray appearing and disabling the default ray interactors. Okay, if you do not see the curved rays on one of the controllers like I am having with my right one, make sure you have a bit of distance between the object and the controller for it to appear, as the curved ray requires to have a minimum number of points to actually draw the curve with. Awesome, let's test the same interaction with our hands. Alright, I can grab the objects with my left hand and with my right hand as well. That's good. Now moving on to the ray grab, I can grab the object only using pinch gestures and not with the grab, as I have selected only the pinch interaction from the interactor drop down. You can select either of them or both. Okay, next for the distance grab and only for the hand interactors, now we can see a ghost of the cube appearing to where the object is going to be grabbed in our hand, giving us a visual cue of what's gonna happen. And I think this is a really nice addition to the distance grab interaction. Alright, with that we concluded how we can add interactions to our existing game objects in a scene using quick actions. For a new scene, I would recommend you should still follow using building blocks. Okay, hope this video was helpful in order to understand the quick actions feature, and most importantly, why and when you should use it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in another one.